We've made it clear that evolution is not a philosophy, it's not a religious idea, it's not an ideology. It's the best, indeed, it's the only scientific explanation for the fact that there is change in the natural order.
Before Abraham was, I am.
All right. Hey, welcome. Good to see you. Are you glad you're here? Well, it's too soon to say probably, but I want to say a big thank you to our teams that have been here for days and hours setting this up. Can we just say a big thank you to those guys? Sitting over here up on the stage, a lot of work, but super cool. Well, if I say thank you for being here today, I am making an assumption. I am actually making several assumptions, really. I am assuming that you are you and that I am me and that we are different beings. I can't prove that, of course. It's an assumption. You could call it a leap of faith, but we can't even move on unless we make that leap of faith, so let's just make it, okay? I'm also assuming that we have what might be called an independent existence. You are not a projection of my mind, and I am not just a projection of your mind. You are over there, I am over here, and the ideas of you being where you are and me being where I am, those ideas in our minds actually correspond to reality. Are you getting a headache yet? But there's another assumption in play when I say thank you for being here, and that is the assumption that you didn't have to be here. So I am assuming that you came by choice or by free will, if you want to get technical, volition. There are some materialistic theories that are mechanistic and deterministic. These theories would say that the only reason you are here today is because the chemistry set inside your brain determined that you would be here, and that you actually had no choice in the matter because free will is an illusion. And if free will is an illusion, then it would be illogical for me to thank you for doing something that you had no choice in doing. Does that make sense? You're smarter than me. So, at the risk of digging this hole any deeper, let me put it another way. The chemistry set in my brain is giving me signals of happiness and pleasure over my perception of what appears to be your presence at this inaugural moment of 60 degrees. But hey, let's just cut through all of that and take a leap of faith and say, thank you for being here at 60 degrees, TED Talk style conversations on logic, faith, and life. I thought it was time in our city that we did an event like this where we are not super religious, it's not churchy people doing churchy things, but we are really thinking through some of the big questions from a logical, philosophical, scientific, mathematic, and yes, ultimately a religious standpoint. My name is Bill Giovanetti. I am the senior pastor here at this church. I actually know what it means to have a personal crisis of faith. Over the course of these 8 events, I will be sharing that story. But as I stand here before you today, I have come to be completely convinced that there is no system of philosophy or of religion, there is no worldview of any place, any time, that is as consistent logically, historically, philosophically, scientifically, and even psychologically as historic biblical Christianity. I would also like to make the claim that there has never been an observable fact of science, of history, of archaeology, or any other study that contradicts any fact or truth claim of the Bible. In fact, the opposite is true, and time after time again, science, history, archaeology have always come around to echo what the Bible has been saying all along. There has never been a system of thought as life-giving and as demonstrably true as biblical Christianity, and it's time to say so. So we are here saying so, but it is our job as Christians not just to say so, but to prove it as much as we can. It is our job to make the case. Can we prove this? Absolutely no, because the leap of faith, that element, never goes away. But as you're going to see, every system, whether it's being an atheist or an agnostic or a member of some other philosophy, religion, or worldview, every system has a leap of faith. So no, we do not stand here and claim that we can prove biblical Christianity like a scientist would prove something in a lab, but we can show that the Christian worldview is logical, it is consistent, and it is more plausible than any other system. That is our argument. And the burden is on us to make that case, and the burden is on you as a listener who has an open mind to be objective, to be open-minded, and to give the claims of Jesus Christ a fair hearing. That is why you have come. That is perhaps why you have joined us online. So thank you. I respect you for being here. I respect you very much for giving us a listen. We feel honored that you would show up today. I do want to give you a heads up that at each of our events, there are 8 of them. It goes Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I do want to give you a heads up that at each of our events, we will end with me here on this stage inviting you, wherever you are, to say a simple prayer of faith. And I know that's religious, but we will not embarrass you. We will not single you out. If you are interested in doing that, no pressure, no manipulation, none of that. So tonight we will have a couple of speakers who are joining us digitally, Justin Brierly and John McCray. In between, there will be a super cool video from William Lane Craig. Our first speaker is Justin Brierly. Justin is the host of a radio show called Unbelievable, and he is a prolific podcaster and YouTube guy. He's on the premier Christian radio network in London, in the United Kingdom. He's the author of the book Unbelievable, which a number of people in our group here have been actually working through. The book is called Unbelievable: Why After 10 Years of Talking with Atheists, I'm Still a Christian. Justin is married to Lucy. They have 4 children. He has a huge following on YouTube. He is an expert in thinking through the big questions of life. We will hear from Justin over the next 2 weeks, starting tonight. He has called his first talk, Why God Makes Sense of Existence. And right after he talks, we will see a related video from Reasonable Faith, which is a program headed by William Lane Craig. That video will be on the fine-tuning of the universe, and I'll come up after that to introduce our second speaker named John McCray. So, are you guys ready for this? You ready? Should we get it going? All right. Without further ado, please enjoy this talk by Justin Brierly.
Hello, I'm absolutely delighted to be with you for Pathway Church's 60 Degrees series, and I'm sorry I can't be with you in person, but I do bring greetings from Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth, to all of her loyal subjects there in the USA. I am, of course, joking. My name is Justin Brierly, and I host the Unbelievable radio show and podcast right here in the UK, but it is listened to all over the world, and we have a lot of listeners in California. And I'm speaking to you from my own church here in the UK, where my wife and I are based, and we've got many friends, though, on the west coast of the US, and you've been in our thoughts and prayers in recent weeks and months as you've dealt with all of these fires and also, of course, the effects of the COVID-19 outbreak, as we are dealing with here in the UK as well. We're with you, and we know you're going to get through this. I love that Pathway have decided to host these conversations on logic, faith, and life. That's really what I've been doing on my show, Unbelievable, for the last 15 years or so. It's all about debating the big questions of life and faith. Now, I'm a Christian, but that doesn't mean I can't ask questions of my faith. And the guests who come on my show are asking big questions too, like, Does Christianity make sense? Can I believe the Bible? What about suffering? Do miracles really happen? And over the years, I've put many of the world's leading atheists and skeptics in conversation with leading Christian thinkers. And in that time, I've heard just about every objection going to Christianity. And yet today, I remain firmly and confidently a Christian. Why, you may ask? Well, over the course of 4 short presentations, I want to give you some reasons for why I believe it makes sense to be a Christian. Here's the thing. Whether you think of yourself as religious or not, we're all looking at life from a certain perspective, a certain worldview, if you like, from which we interpret the world around us. Now, sometimes my atheist friend over here will tell me that since I'm a Christian over there, all of the burden of proof is on me to show why my beliefs are true in God and Jesus and all that kind of stuff. They say, I don't bear any of the burden of proof. But I don't think that's quite right, actually. You see, most atheists over here have a certain set of assumptions about the way the world is. In fact, most atheists I know subscribe to a worldview called naturalism. That's the view that all that exists is physical stuff, ultimately. Everything can be boiled down to electrons and atoms and the physical laws of the universe. But the thing is, that viewpoint has a whole bunch of consequences to it. It means that the universe came from nowhere and is going nowhere. It means there's no ultimate purpose to reality, nor any ultimate meaning to life. And all the ideas we have about beauty and love and justice, good and evil, well, they're all effectively illusions created in our own minds which are ultimately also reducible simply to atoms and electrons. So it turns out there's actually quite a lot of content in the worldview of my atheist friend over here. But what makes them believe that? You see, I think they should be called to defend their beliefs just as much as they ask me to make the case for why I'm a Christian or why I believe in God. You see, we both have a point of view. The question is, which one best fits the evidence? As I've examined that evidence, I've come to the view that Christianity actually makes best sense of the universe we see out there and best sense of what we make of ourselves in here, what it means to be human. And today I want to start with why I believe God makes sense of human existence. Now, in the 21st century, there's been a certain narrative playing out in popular culture. I'm sure you've noticed it. The idea that faith and science are at odds with each other. There's this popular notion that we don't need God now that we have science. And the fact is, actually, if anything, I think if you actually go and look at what's happening in those areas, the direction of travel has actually been in the opposite direction to that story for the past 70 years or so, as science has revealed the extraordinary complexity and origins of our universe and just what it took to get us here, humans, in the first place. Let's start with something called the fine-tuning of the universe for life. Now, this was a complete revelation to me when I first began to uncover the evidence for the amazing precision and complexity of our universe in being suited to allow life to develop. Now, if you're on Facebook, you can add your religious status to your profile. And I once remember seeing an atheist friend of mine who had written in the box for religious beliefs, "I can hardly believe I exist." And it's a funny line, but actually, it's got an ironic truth to it. You see, the existence of you and me is incredibly unlikely. We should find it hard to believe that we exist because we are so incredibly unlikely in the big scheme of things. And yet, here we are. We do exist. And this is where the science of fine-tuning tells us what it took to get us here. Now, physicists agree that when the universe came into existence, the fundamental laws and physical constants it was birthed with and which govern it were fine-tuned in an astonishingly accurate way to allow for life to develop one day in the cosmos. Now, this all sounds a bit complex, doesn't it? Well, I've tried to convey it in a memorable way in a video that I created, and why I think this fine-tuning points to God. Have a watch.
Some people say that human existence is a result of a roll of the cosmic dice. Like the gambler who stakes his life savings on the next throw, we just got lucky in the lottery of life. Some people say there's no purpose in the universe. no grand plan, no God behind it all. Our numbers just came up and here we are. But I don't believe them, and nor should you. If I roll this dice, the chances of getting a 6 is 1 in 6. That's not too bad. But what are the chances of me rolling 6 twice in a row? Well, the odds get longer. It's 1 in 6 times by 1 in 6. That's 1 in 36. So I'd have to be pretty lucky to get 2 6s in a row. Now, every time I add the chances of rolling another 6 in a row, the odds go up exponentially, and it gets even more unlikely. Now, what if I rolled this dice 70 times, and every single time I got a 6? Okay, that's pretty unlikely, but it's possible, right? Well, in fact, the chances of rolling a 6 70 times in a row are around 1 in 10 to the 55. That's a 1 with 55 zeros after it. Now, just to put that in perspective, how long would I have to stand here rolling this dice, allowing about 5 seconds per roll, before hitting that lucky streak and rolling 76s in a row? Well, I had a mathematician friend work it out for me. On average, you would have to continually roll this dice for 100 trillion, 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 trillion years before your numbers come up. That's a long time. What if you applied that thinking to us? What are the odds of us being here? Now, the odds of rolling 76s in a row, 1 in 10 to the 55, as it happens, those are the same odds of something called the expansion rate of the universe being just right for the existence of us here today. From the moment of the Big Bang, when our universe began to rapidly expand, the rate of that expansion was exquisitely finely balanced. Any faster, and the universe would have expanded too rapidly to allow the formation of chemicals, atoms, stars, and galaxies. Any slower, and the universe would have collapsed back in on itself. But as it happens, the universe expanded at just the right rate to allow for life to develop in the future, for us to be here. It hit 70 rolls of the number 6 in a row, first time. And the expansion rate of the universe is just one among 30 or so other incredibly sensitively finely tuned constants and fundamental forces in the universe that must be just the way they are for the universe to be able to produce us. So let's imagine, if I went ahead and rolled this dice 70 times, and what do you know, every time it came up 6. No waiting for trillions upon trillions of years, first time. Beginner's luck? Hardly. You would assume that I must have rigged it. Maybe the dice are loaded, maybe there are 6s on every side. It can't be chance. Now let me ask you, why would we assume that this universe with us in it, which is actually way more improbable than my 70 rolls, is just a result of chance? The fact that we're here shows that someone's loaded the dice. In fact, maybe there's no dice at all. What if the evidence points to this life-permitting universe actually being the product of an intelligent mind which intended for us to be here? Now, you could come up with some speculative other theory. Maybe there's an infinite number of universes, giving you an infinite number of chances to roll the dice. Maybe. But we don't have any scientific evidence for it. So if you're hanging your hat on that possibility, then you're every bit as much committed to a faith position as the person who says God was behind it. Believing in God isn't a delusion. It's a perfectly reasonable conclusion when we look at the fingerprints on our universe. And if it's true that we aren't just the fluke result of a cosmic roll of the dice, and that we're actually here because a grand designer intended us from the very beginning, well, that's worth staking something on.
It's amazing, right? And I really do believe that the idea of a creator God behind the universe makes better sense of our existence than just blind chance, which is ultimately what the atheist has to go with. Now, after that video was released, a young guy got in touch with me, and he'd had really profound doubts about his faith. He was struggling with it, but he says he was really helped by this video. In fact, he says he now puts dice around his house to remind him that he's not here by accident. He's even had some dice tattooed onto his wrist to remind him that his existence isn't just a random roll of the dice. He's here for a purpose. But fine-tuning isn't the only remarkable scientific evidence for God. There are lots of other aspects of our universe and our existence as humans that seem to defy a naturalistic explanation. There's the extraordinary complexity and nature of the DNA that gave rise to life. The fact that the very universe in which life arose is a result of this thing we call the Big Bang, an event 14 billion years ago, which many would argue points to a beginning. Now, here we're talking about an event that saw the coming into existence of space, matter, energy, even time itself. And it's natural to ask, well, what happened? What set that off? There only seems to be one candidate for that job, as far as I can see. It's got to be something that transcends time, space, and matter. And that's the thing we usually call God. Even the very fact we can do science at all is kind of weird and serendipitous when you think about it, because the reason we can map out these galaxies and explore the history of our universe and work out the physical laws that govern it, well, it's all because there's an underlying code. It's called mathematics. And all of our physical laws are written in this underlying code, mathematics. But why? Why should that be? You see, one Nobel Prize-winning physicist called this phenomenon miraculous. There's no obvious reason why these lumps of grey matter in our head should be able to unlock the mysteries of the entire universe using this tool of mathematics, and yet we can. You see, the way that mathematics interacts with the physical world, on atheism, that just has to be the most extraordinary fluke, the most random coincidence. But if there's a God behind the whole show, then, well, that kind of makes sense of it. You'd expect God to create the universe in a way where we can understand it using the language of mathematics. And of course, all of these theories and whether they count as evidence for God are hotly debated, and we've debated them many times on my show, I can assure you. But if you're asking me, which direction does the arrow of evidence point? Does it point towards naturalism, towards my atheist friend's perspective, or towards the idea that there is a God behind the universe? That's my perspective as a Christian. Well, I think it's definitely pointing in the direction of God, towards a universe in which we were intended as the outcome by something beyond this universe. The arrow of evidence, I believe, does point towards God. So when it comes to my atheist friend and I asking this question, or which of our worldviews best explains human existence, well then I believe the evidence points to God and away from atheism. That's just one reason why I think it makes sense to be a Christian. And I'm looking forward to bringing you some more in future talks for 60 Degrees. Thank you for watching, and keep asking those big questions on logic, faith, and life.
From galaxies and stars, down to atoms and subatomic particles, the very structure of our universe is determined by these numbers. These are the fundamental constants and quantities of the universe. Scientists have come to the shocking realization that each of these numbers has been carefully dialed to an astonishingly precise value, a value that falls within an exceedingly narrow, life-permitting range. If any one of these numbers were altered by even a hair's breadth, no physical, interactive life of any kind could exist anywhere. There'd be no stars, no life, no planets, no chemistry. Consider gravity, for example. The force of gravity is determined by the gravitational constant. If this constant varied by just 1 in 10 to the 60th parts, none of us would exist. To understand how exceedingly narrow this life-permitting range is, imagine a dial divided into 10 to the 60th increments. To get a handle on how many tiny points on the dial this is, compare it to the number of cells in your body, or the number of seconds that have ticked by since time began. If the gravitational constant had been out of tune by just one of these infinitesimally small increments, the universe would either have expanded and thinned out so rapidly that no stars could form and life couldn't exist, or it would have collapsed back on itself with the same result: no stars, no planets, and no life. Or consider the expansion rate of the universe. This is driven by the cosmological constant. A change in its value by a mere 1 part in 10 to the 120th parts would cause the universe to expand too rapidly or too slowly. In either case, the universe would again be life prohibiting. Or another example of fine-tuning. If the mass and energy of the early universe were not evenly distributed to an incomprehensible precision of 1 part in 10 to the 10 to the 123rd, the universe would be hostile to life of any kind. The fact is, our universe permits physical, interactive life only because these, and many other numbers, have been independently and exquisitely balanced on a razor's edge. Wherever physicists look, they see examples of fine-tuning. The remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers seem to have been very finely adjusted to make possible the development of life. If anyone claims not to be surprised by the special features that the universe has, he's hiding his head in the sand. These special features are surprising and unlikely. What is the best explanation for this astounding phenomenon? There are 3 live options. The fine-tuning of the universe is due to either physical necessity, chance, or design. Which of these options is the most plausible? According to this alternative, the universe must be life-permitting. The precise values of these constants and quantities could not be otherwise. But is this plausible? Is a life-prohibiting universe impossible? Far from it. It's not only possible, it's far more likely than a life-permitting universe. The constants and quantities are not determined by the laws of nature. There's no reason or evidence to suggest that fine-tuning is necessary. How about chance? Did we just get really, 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 really lucky? No. The probabilities involved are so ridiculously remote as to put the fine-tuning well beyond the reach of chance. So, in an effort to keep this option alive, some have gone beyond empirical science and opted for a more speculative approach, known as the multiverse. They imagine a universe generator that cranks out such a vast number of universes that, odds are, life-permitting universes will eventually pop out. However, there's no scientific evidence for the existence of this multiverse. It cannot be detected, observed, measured, or proved. And the universe generator itself would require an enormous amount of fine-tuning. Furthermore, small patches of order are far more probable than big ones. So the most probable observable universe would be a small one, inhabited by a single, simple observer. But what we actually observe is the very thing that we should least expect: a vast, spectacularly complex, highly ordered universe, inhabited by billions of other observers. So even if the multiverse existed, which is a moot point, it wouldn't do anything to explain the fine-tuning. Given the implausibility of physical necessity or chance, the best explanation for why the universe is fine-tuned for life may very well be it was designed that way. A common-sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super-intellect monkeyed with physics, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The numbers one calculates from the facts seem to me so overwhelming as to put this conclusion almost beyond question. There is for me powerful evidence that there is something going on behind it all. It seems as though somebody has fine-tuned nature's numbers to make the universe. The impression of design is overwhelming. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge.
Good, how you doing? One of the most important lessons I ever learned growing up as a Christian, growing up in the church, was that I did not have to take my brain and park it on a shelf in order to be a Christian. That there was plenty of evidence, logic, and science behind the Christian truth claim. Our next speaker is named John McCray. John is the host of a really popular and really fun YouTube channel called What Do You Meme? You'll hear him joke about that in his talk. John and his wife will actually be here physically next week to do their sessions live and in person for several nights of 60 Degrees. John has degrees in philosophy. He runs that YouTube channel, What Do You Meme?, where he responds to anti-Christian memes, videos, and slogans. You will hear John joke about this channel in a few minutes. John, on his channel, also gives cultural commentary on events going on in popular culture. He is passionate about getting thoughtfulness and truth and reality checks, especially to younger generations in creative and unique ways. I've been watching his YouTube channel for a while, and not only is John informed, really insightful, and smart, he is also super funny and super cool, and I'm hoping some of that eventually will rub off on me. After John is finished, I'll wrap up and I'll give you a chance to take that step of faith in your life without any pressure, if that is something that you are willing to do. We won't embarrass you, just an open door. So here we go with John McCray.
So when we say that Christianity is the only way to heaven, people immediately will start to get defensive. They start to say things like,
I can't believe that you said that Christianity is the only way to heaven. That's the problem with the world today. It's the fundamentalist religious people that think that they have the truth and everyone else doesn't. That's so narrow-minded.
and honestly, I can understand where they're coming from. My wife actually said something similar about the GPS when we were going somewhere. Take a look. You got the address, right?
Yeah, babe, but I think this GPS thing is broken.
Really? Why? What's it doing?
It says there's only one way to our destination.
Huh? Doesn't mean it's broke. What are you talking about?
Just one way. That seems so narrow.
Narrow?
Who wants to follow directions when there's only one way to get there?
Okay, like, honestly, I'm not really too sure I get it.
It's just, I just can't believe in a GPS like this. I'm gonna throw this crap out the window.
What? No, stop. Babe, what are you doing? Stop acting crazy.
Seriously?
Babe, what do you mean?
Really? You're gonna defend a GPS over your wife? Really? Seriously?
I'm not defending the GPS. I'll just...
Really? Then why don't you just go be with your GPS since you love it so much?
Whoa, I don't...
You want to marry the GPS? Marry the GPS. Go, marry the GPS.
What? No, stop. I just don't understand why it bothers you so much that there's only one way to get there. Okay, look, we have two options. We can either follow the road to get there, or we can follow any other road and not get there. It's honestly that simple. Why on earth would that offend you?
Because it's so narrow-minded. We should be able to take any road to get to our destination. I hate this GPS. I hate it. I hate it.
The GPS is just trying to help us by telling us the truth.
Here we go again. You know what? Just have the GPS do your laundry from now on. Seriously.
It's just giving us a fact. It's not narrow. Facts aren't narrow. They're just facts.
Yes, they are.
Facts are narrow?
Yes. Facts are closed-minded, hateful, bigots.
But facts...
Feelings don't care about your facts.
But...
This GPS shouldn't be telling me facts. Who does it think it is? If it cared about me, it would either not tell me facts or lie to me.
Are you saying...
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
This is so weird. Hey, babe, don't cry. Well, I guess we can go to the postmodern store and get a GPS that won't give us any facts, and that way it will let us drive around in circles forever until we run out of gas.
Really?
Of course, anything for you, babe.
Aw, babe. Let's go. How do we get there?
Now, I hope you got the point. Like the GPS analogy, if Christianity is true, then it's a fact that Christ is the only way to God. That doesn't make it narrow or closed-minded any more than a GPS taking you to one destination is narrow or closed-minded. Now, of course, I do believe that Christianity is true, and we'll talk about that a little bit more during my next talk, and you'll also hear more reasons why to believe in Christianity from people like Justin Brierly and the other speakers during this conference. But the ironic thing here is that you don't even need to believe in Christianity in order to know that Christianity isn't any more narrow-minded or arrogant than any of the other views out there today. Think about it. All of us have a way that we understand the world that answers the big questions of life. Questions like, why am I here? Why do I exist at all? What's the purpose for my life? What happens when I die? What's the truth about religion? And so on. Now, it doesn't matter which view you hold to or which view of the world that we take. All of us have a view of the world that's ultimately exclusive in nature. And here's why. I remember talking with a friend years ago who asked me what I believe happens when we die. And the conversation went something like this. Yo, so what do you think happens when we die? Well, as a believer, I believe that Jesus Christ is the only way to heaven, and you need Christ if you want to have everlasting life. Whoa, bro. So you really think that you're right and everyone else's view is wrong? Seriously? Yeah? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with it? It's narrow-minded, kind of bigoted, and to be straight up, it's really kind of arrogant to think that you have the truth and everyone else doesn't. Okay, I hear ya. So, what's your view? Me? Oh, well, my view is way more open-minded, because I believe that all religions are equally true and right, and there's no such thing as a wrong or a false religion, and all religions are just different paths going to the same destination. But even on the different views, they all have different destinations. And not to mention the fact that all of them have these different concepts of God that can't be harmonized. So I just don't see how they can all be right. All of them can be wrong, of course, but they all can't be right. Look, man, I'm just saying, if you want to believe in Christianity, that's fine. But all I'm saying is just please just keep it to yourself. That's all I'm saying. Why? Because your view is too exclusive. I just don't think it's right for you to try to convert other people to your view. And I think it's wrong for people to try to force their views on other people. Okay. Now I'm assuming that all of us have heard some sort of variation of his arguments before. The only problem is, my friend didn't realize that he was guilty of the exact same thing that he accused me of. Because if my view was narrow, then his view was at least just as narrow as mine. Here's why. First off, he claimed that I was narrow-minded because I thought that my view of religion was true, and I didn't believe that other religious views were true. But at the same time, he also thought that his view of religion was true, and he also didn't believe that other people's religious views, such as exclusive Christianity, were true. Why is it narrow-minded when I believe that I have the true view about religion, but it's not narrow-minded that he believes that he has the true view about religion? Secondly, he said that my view was arrogant because I also believe that everyone who has a different view than mine, or anyone who has a view that contradicts my view, is wrong. But my friend was also saying the exact same thing, because he believed that I was wrong because I had a different view than him. So why is it wrong for me to have a different view than him, but it's not wrong for him to have a different view than me? According to his standards, his view was just as arrogant as mine. And lastly, he said that no matter what, I should just keep my religious views to myself, and that it would actually be wrong for me to try to convert people to my religious beliefs, and that I shouldn't force my views on other people. Now, keep in mind that he said this while being in the literal process of trying to convert me to his religious beliefs. Why is it wrong for me to try to convert people to my view, but it's not wrong for him to try to convert me to his view? And why is it okay for him to force his views on me, demanding that I accept his view and live my life accordingly, but it wasn't okay for me to do the same? Riddle me that one. So, with that being said, even if I accepted his line of reasoning, then it would just force him to reject his own views according to his own standards. So, in reality, no one is being any more narrow or arrogant, because having an exclusive view is essential. It's unavoidable. All of us have exclusive views, including those that complain about views that are exclusive. So it's not really a question about how exclusive a religious view is, but instead, the real question is, why does Christianity claim to be the only way? Now, I'm going to go ahead and answer this question from a Christian perspective. So if you aren't a Christian, at least you'll be able to understand the rationale behind why Christians claim that Christ is the only way to salvation. So the question is, why does Christianity claim to be the only way? And the answer to the question is because Christ solves the problem. And at some level, all of us know that there's a problem. When we look out into the world, we see a world full of people that have almost universal agreement that we shouldn't take advantage of other people, that we shouldn't hurt other people, that we shouldn't lie or cheat or exploit or steal, and so on. While at the same time, we also realize that we still continue to do these things, and so do other people, despite that near universal agreement that we shouldn't. We also recognize that we have a natural tendency to want to divide from other people, and to fight, and to start wars, and to demonize other people in order to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. Now, we see this happening with anything from religion to politics to skin color to sports, or really just about anything that you can think of. The reality is that there's something deep down in the human heart that stops us from doing the right thing, even though in a lot of cases, we know what the right thing to do is, and we still choose not to do it. Either that, or we justify to ourselves why all of the wrong things that we do were really the right thing for us to do. And that's the easiest thing in the world for us to do as humans, by the way. When it comes to other people, we say that that person is awful for doing such a thing. But when it comes to us, we say, meh, it's complicated, and I had a right to do it. The fact is, none of us are perfect. We all mess up and we all do things that are wrong. And the Bible calls this problem sin. But this problem, this sin problem, it intensifies once we realize that God is perfectly just. Now, if you think about a judge who's perfect in his justice, you know that he'll make sure that every wrongdoing will be punished. If he even let one single wrongdoing go unpunished, then he wouldn't be perfectly just. But if he's perfectly just, then he has to punish every single wrongdoing. Think about the law that we live under for just a second, okay? Now, you know that you don't get any credit for not breaking the law. It's not as though you're going to get a check that says, because you didn't break the law in a year, here's a check for $50,000 or something like that. Would be nice, but it's not how it works, right? Instead, you're expected to follow the law, and you're responsible if you break the law. You're responsible to pay the price, even if you weren't aware of the laws in the first place. Now, think about how much more that concept would apply when we're talking about a maximally and perfectly just judge. He would have to punish even the smallest wrongdoings in order to remain in perfect justice. He has to, because he can't violate his own nature. Are you scared yet? Well, the good news is that perfect justice isn't his only attribute. God is not only perfectly just, but at the same time, he's also perfectly merciful. So this means that he cares for us and he wants for us to be rightly related to him. He wants to forgive us of all of the wrongdoings that we've ever committed. But if he were to just blink at sin and arbitrarily just forgive sin, then he obviously would no longer be perfectly just. So there would be a conflict there. So on the one hand, God is perfectly just and he has to punish all wrongdoings. But on the other hand, he's perfectly merciful.
Then how does a perfectly just and a perfectly merciful God save us from ourselves?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Thankfully, God has another attribute that we haven't mentioned yet, and that's being perfectly loving. Now, perfect love isn't selfish, but instead it's self-giving. It gives sacrificially to others without demanding anything in return.
I still don't get it. Even if God were perfectly loving, he's still perfectly just. So, how does God's love work with his justice in order to forgive us for the things that we freely chose to do wrong?
And that's another good question. Here's how. Now, all of these attributes of God that we've been talking about today, perfect justice, perfect mercy, and perfect love, They can all be seen working together the moment that God broke into history to solve the problem for us. Now, because of his perfect love, the infinite creator of the entire universe put on human flesh and made himself vulnerable and came into our broken and dangerous and fragmented world. Now, even though he was God, he didn't use that power or that authority for his own benefit. Instead, he put it aside. He put it aside and he didn't harm anyone, and instead, he became the object of torture and the victim of the most radical injustice, all the way to the point of being tortured to death. Because of his perfect mercy, he didn't retaliate when he was tortured, and instead, he prayed for those who were persecuting him and torturing him, and he prayed for their forgiveness. Because of his perfect mercy and love, he came into our world and took the punishment for us, and he did so in our place so that way perfect justice would be satisfied. So, in other words, he paid the penalty for the things that we freely chose to do wrong out of nothing but pure and unadulterated love. Because he didn't do this to save himself or for his own personal benefit of any kind of sort or anything like that. No, instead, he did it out of love to save us from ourselves. It was only for our benefit, not for his own. And in order to have perfect love, there needs to be the ability to say no. So he doesn't force his sacrifice on us, but instead he offers it to us as a free gift that we can choose to accept or not. His sacrificial gift means that we'll be judged by the life that he lived and not by the life that we lived. And if you haven't grasped the significance of this yet, this means that we, as imperfect people who have freely chosen to do wrong, can be in the presence of a perfect and holy God as if we did everything right. All we have to do is accept his offer. That's how God's perfect justice and mercy and love all became visible, working together on the cross. So all of that is just to say that the problem that Christianity solves is sin. When we sin, we not only hurt ourselves, but we also hurt others, and we make the world a worse place. And also, we sin against the creator of the entire universe himself. If Jesus Christ came down to earth to save us from ourselves, then there is no other way to be rightly related to an eternally perfect God. In order for us to be in the presence of an eternally perfect God that's so holy that sin can't live in his presence, we need to have all of our sins forgiven and wiped clean. But the problem is, we can't do that ourselves. Even if we could, and let's just say that we stopped doing everything wrong today and we never did anything wrong again for the rest of our lives. Now, that still doesn't undo what's been already done in the past, any more than it undoes a criminal's past crimes simply because he's living a better life today. We don't say to the criminal, well, I know he murdered a few people in the past, years ago, but he's been a good citizen ever since. No, we don't do that. Instead, we say that we need to arrest him because we would call for him to be punished for the things that he did wrong in his past, no matter how good of a citizen that he is today. He would still be guilty of those crimes. And if God is eternally perfect, then all it takes is one sin of any kind to keep us infinitely separated from being in his presence, and it doesn't matter when we committed that crime. So the only solution to the problem of our wrongdoings, the things that no other religious view can offer, is to accept the free gift of the sacrifice that was made for you and me out of God's love. The sacrifice that can only be offered to us because of what Jesus Christ did for you and me on the cross. So why do Christians say that Christ is the only way to everlasting life? Well, the answer is because Jesus is the only one that solves the problem.
All right, let's give it up for John McCray. And I love how he ended that by saying Jesus is the only one that solves the problem. Actually, Jesus is the only one that solves two problems, both of which we spoke about tonight. One is he solves the design problem. He is the cosmic powerhouse and the infinite, almighty, omniscient, omnipotent designer of the universe. He solves the design problem. And the other problem he solves is the moral problem. It is philosophically and morally impossible for fallen, finite creatures to connect with, relate to unfallen, infinite deity. Maybe it's not an accident that Earth is habitable. Maybe there's a plan, and with that plan, a planner. And all we're asking you to do is to think about it. If you think about it, there are really only two options. Either you are a cosmic accident and there is no plan, or you are here by design. If option 1 is true, then human life really has no meaning, no purpose, no value, no beginning, and no ending that really matters at all. And all you have is a purpose without a purpose, coupled with whatever value you just make up. All of the things under that premise, all of the things that make you unique, all of the things that make you precious, all of the things that make you are really just chemical reactions inside the test tube of your head. And there is therefore really nothing special about you or any of us. There is nothing to differentiate you from any other animal, and there is certainly nothing sacred. Think very carefully before you board this train that says that human beings are accidents of matter and energy, because that train will take you to some destinations you probably don't want to go to. But if the other option is true, option 2, then you are here by design. And if you are here by design, then your life consists of far more than you can imagine. Set aside your preconceptions for just 3 more minutes and go along with me. Let's assume that you are here by design, you are here by God's grand plan, and that as part of that plan, you're not only here, meaning you are here on earth having a life independent from my imagination, but you are also here on this night in this place at this time. Not by accident. It is part of a divine plan. What if you are here by design? And what if behind that design is the intention of a God who loves you, and of a God who cares for you, and the God who made you, and who wants you back connected to his own heart? This theory leads you to a radically different set of conclusions than the other one. Under this theory, you are created with meaning and with purpose. Under this theory, you are too precious to be measured. You have a life that matters for time and beyond time into eternity. Under this theory, you are a sacred being bearing a divine imprint, and you are special to God. You are created for honor and for dignity and for respect, and you are called to treat everyone else with honor and dignity and respect too. To board this Christian train is to end in a wildly different place than you would end if you just simply define us all as cosmic accidents. As John McCray explained, God's perfect love, his perfect justice, and his perfect mercy come together at the cross of Christ. And this is how forgiveness makes sense. Perfect, full, lasting forgiveness, washing a person as white as snow. This cross is how heaven makes sense, populated by people who have moral failure on their records, populated even by moral train wrecks like us. And this is how you make sense, that God made you according to design, and he made you so that you might have relationship with him deep in your heart, now and forevermore. That is our message. That is what we believe, and we think there's really good evidence for it. And I am wondering if you have come tonight and you've thought about these things enough to be willing to actually take a step of becoming a Christian. And I've done this often enough to know that I need to say, you don't have to be ready. Some of you might be thinking, well, I'm not ready for this. I wasn't planning on this. That's okay. You don't have to be ready. What matters is whether or not you're willing. Will you simply say yes to the offer that God has? If you are willing to do that, I want to help you do that, because it's the simplest thing. It's so simple a child can do it. I did this when I was a little boy, little adorable Italian boy growing up in Chicago. It's simple enough for a child. It's profound enough for the deepest thinkers in all of world history. But if you're willing tonight to do this simple thing, I want to help you say a prayer of faith in which you make it official to say, I am a Christian, and I am believing in Jesus as my Savior. Because his sacrifice on the cross was all that had to happen. No works, no additions, no religion, no moral improvement, no performance, no ritual, no nothing. It's just simply trust him. Trust Jesus, and trust Jesus alone. If you are willing to express that, I want to lead you in a prayer. And we're not going to single you out or have you come forward or anything like that. But I want to lead you in a simple prayer. So I'm going to ask you to bow your head and to close your eyes as we move into this prayer. And we just do this to create a quiet space as we wrap up, a quiet space around you, and to extend that courtesy to the people who are sitting nearby you. But in the privacy of your own heart, I want to dedicate this closing moment to you if you are here tonight and you've never received Jesus and you're willing to do that. And the way to do it is through a simple prayer. And the prayer that we use follows a pattern called ABC, admit, believe, choose. You can talk to God silently in your heart. He'll hear you. This is between you and God. This is your privilege, your opportunity. And I want you to know people have been praying for you to take this step tonight. So I'm going to lead you in a simple prayer. I will say a sample. I will say it one line at a time. And I'll pause after each line. And if you want to, you can just echo this prayer in your heart up to God. So here we go. This is what to pray. A stands for admit. And you could say this to God. God, I admit that I fall short of what you created me to be. I admit, therefore, that I have sin on my record. And I admit, God, that I can't fix this. I cannot make it go away. I admit that I need you. And then B stands for believe, where you can pray this to God and say, God, I believe that whatever had to happen to bring me to you, Jesus did when he died on the cross for me. On the cross, I believe my sins were paid for in full. On the cross, I believe Jesus balanced the scales of justice for me. God, I don't get everything Jesus did, but I get enough to know that he is the one, the only one, who can bring me back to you. So I'm telling you, I'm believing in Jesus. And then the last thing to say to God, C stands for choose, admit, believe, choose. Say, God, I choose right now to receive Jesus as my Savior. God, I'm making it official. I choose to trust him. I choose to rely on him as my only hope. I'm unchoosing everything else, and right now just choosing Jesus. I ask you, God, right now, please save me. Please adopt me. Please make me your child forever, I pray. I'm going to ask you to keep your head bowed and your eyes closed. I'm going to close in prayer. And if you prayed that prayer, the Bible says, whoever believes on him, Jesus said, whoever believes on me shall have everlasting life. He said, whoever comes to God by me, I will never cast aside. And if you prayed that prayer, I believe that God transformed 1,000 things about you. You didn't feel it. But I do want to pray for you. And I would like you to tell me. And the way we normally do this is I have people look at me with no one's looking around because everyone's eyes are closed and their heads are bowed. But I'm going to have you do something a little different. Pull out your cell phone and just shine it at me for a flash. Thank you. Welcome to God's family. Thank you. Welcome to God's family. I just want to acknowledge you. I want to pray for you. I see that. Thank you. Welcome to God's family. I'll look your way and acknowledge you. This is cool. Yes, thank you. Welcome to God's family. Just another 3 seconds here. Thank you. Welcome to God's family. Yes, yes. Thank you. Welcome to God's family. 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 Thank you. Wow, this is cool. Awesome. Heavenly Father, for each one who today prayed to receive Jesus, I pray they would go out of this place super excited and super happy because something amazing happened, that they were immediately adopted into your family forever, immediately forgiven, immediately given the gift of eternal life. You have come to live inside of them, and on and on and on, Lord. There's so many wonderful things that you have for them. I pray that they would walk out of here confident that you belong to them and they belong to you forever. And for all of us, God, give us open minds and open hearts to consider all these things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Hey, let's give it up for everybody who prayed today to receive Jesus. Super cool. If you prayed to receive Jesus, we do have a Bible and a book to give you. The book's called Welcome to God's Family, totally free. You can get it at the hub. There's a hub tent over here, and there's a hub tent over there, and there's a bookstore tent over there. And also, we have some of our staff. Can you hold them up? Like right over there under the light poles, we have staff members who have these books for you. And it's just totally free. Just say, I'd like a book, and I'll hand it over. And we won't bother you about it. Come back Friday. We're not here tomorrow night, but we will be here Friday. And we have more sessions Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Keep an eye on our website for details. On Friday, you will hear from a medical doctor who, after years of being an atheist, came to Christ. You'll hear a conversation about Christianity's unbeatable logic from me, and Justin Brierly will answer some Q&A from students in our church, college and high school students, with some awesome questions, and we're going to have round one of that Q&A with Justin. Friday night is student night. It's for everybody, but an emphasis on students. And let's see, what else? A lot of fun stuff coming up. If you didn't get a lanyard, you could stop by the hub. We have a lanyard as a gift for you today. So there you go. Thanks for coming. Did you have a good time tonight? Awesome. We will see you on Friday night. Have a good tomorrow and continue to pray that God shuts down these fires and all of that and the COVIDs and all of that. So glad to see you, and come back Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and ditto for next week. We'll see you next time.